A beginning is the time for taking the most delicate care that the balances are correct. This every sister of the Bene Gesserit knows. To begin your study of the life of Muad'dib, then take care that you first place him in his time. Born in the 57th year of the Padishah Emperor Shaddam IV, and take the most special care that you locate Muad'dib in his place, the planet Arrakis. Do not be deceived by the fact that he was born on Caladan and lived his first 15 years there. Arrakis, the planet known as Dune, is forever his place. Frank Herbert's Dune has long been praised as one of the best science fiction novels ever written. It is said that he accomplished for science fiction what J.R.R. Tolkien did for the fantasy genre. World building done right requires a great deal of time, effort, and research. And Frank Herbert's careful efforts are clearly evident in this epic tale of a feudal interstellar society filled with a rich history and complex characters. Storytelling like this involves more than just listing off terms and definitions, facts about planets, institutions, and people. It is storytelling in a way that immerses the reader in this universe through the characters' journeys. And in Dune, this is accomplished perhaps the most through the main protagonist, Paul Atreides. In this video, I'd like to talk about who the character of Paul Atreides is and what we can expect to see from him in the first film of Denis Villeneuve's two-part adaptation. The story of Dune begins with Paul. We learn about this universe from his perspective and his experiences. Even when the story shifts to focus on others that serve a vital part of the story in their own right, Paul is what ties it all together. His destiny is the key to everything. Paul is the 15-year-old son of Duke Leto of House Atreides and his Bene Gesserit concubine, Lady Jessica. Paul's upbringing is unusual to say the least. He grew up on the Atreides homeworld of Caladan, a lush and beautiful oceanic planet. Not being able to have traditional friends of the same age due to security concerns, his instructors became his companions. And these aren't your average teachers. Paul's education includes the training of his father's aides, who also serve on the Duke's War Council. We have Mentat, Master of Assassins Thufir Hawat, veteran weapons master Gurney Halleck, and charismatic swordmaster Duncan Idaho. Paul trains constantly in combat and strategy, and is taught how to protect himself against assassination attempts. As the ducal heir of the powerful and influential House Atreides, Paul is a prime target for their enemies. Knowing this, Leto and Jessica have put forth every effort to make sure Paul has not only an education to prepare him for when he would eventually take on the title of Duke, but to make sure he has the knowledge and ability necessary to survive it. Strength in combat is not all a Duke's son needs. Paul has also been conditioned to become a Mentat. Ones who have been conditioned this way are not aware of it until they reach a certain age. Mentats are humans with the ability to retain and process vast amounts of data, and are able to calculate the outcome of events with incredible accuracy based on this information. Mentats are incredibly valuable in this universe where machine computing technology is banned. These latent abilities begin to awaken in Paul, and so although he is only 15 years old, he is very intelligent, cunning, and calculating. These two are invaluable assets for a future Duke, and certainly a Mentat Duke would be a formidable force. Paul's story definitely isn't your typical hero's journey. It's not so black and white. Nothing in this story is. When the story of Dune begins, Paul's life is about to drastically change. The family is moving from their beautiful homeworld of Caladan to the desert planet of Arrakis, Dune, to take over its spice harvesting operations. Spice is the most valuable commodity in the universe and is at the center of all commerce and industry. Whoever has stewardship over the planet Arrakis, the only place spice is found, can reap incredible wealth and influence, if you can manage to harvest it without drawing the attention of the monstrous sandworms that protect it. There's definitely some culture shock for House Atreides in coming from a water planet, never knowing thirst, to then govern a planet where every drop of moisture is precious, sacred even to the natives. But this drastic change may not seem as great of a shock to Paul. Before they've even left Caladan, he has visions in his dreams of Arrakis and of a beautiful girl. He believes that the dreams that he can remember are predictions, or at least potential futures. The visions are indicative of a great destiny being awakened inside him. The reality is that Paul shouldn't have been born, at least not in accordance with the Bene Gesserit's plans for Lady Jessica's offspring. The Bene Gesserit are an exclusively female religious organization that exert great influence over the Empire through the bloodlines of the powerful. Through their centuries-long breeding and genetics program, it is their goal to create a super being known as the Kwisatz Haderach, the one who can be many places at once. This messiah of sorts would be the only male of their order who would surpass them in their abilities to see into the past and the future. The Bene Gesserit are only able to access their female ancestral memories with the aid of spice, and have a limited ability to see into the future. The Kwisatz Haderach, however, would be able to access both male and female memories of his ancestors, and he would also be able to see far into the future. This is certainly a powerful ability for whoever possesses it, or whoever has control over the person that does. Paul's mother, Lady Jessica, is a part of the Bene Gesserit breeding program. She received especially attentive training from the Order, as she was intended to be the grandmother of this manufactured messiah. She was supposed to have had a daughter who would then marry the Harkonnen heir, Feyd-Rautha, and their child was intended to be this super being. The Bene Gesserit maneuvered matters in this way so that they would have direct control over the Kwisatz Haderach, as he would enact their vision for the direction of humanity. As it turns out, their centuries-long breeding program has now been disrupted by Paul's existence. Lady Jessica knew how much it meant for Leto to have a son and a male heir to carry on his legacy, so she chose to have a son, Paul. However, she was aware that in having a son, she could possibly have given birth to the Kwisatz Haderach herself. All the required genetic material is there, and Jessica senses the possibility of preserving the Bene Gesserit's breeding program. The Bene Gesserit are powerful and have been controlling bloodlines for centuries, and all their work has now been disrupted by Paul's existence. Paul could still be their Kwisatz Haderach, but whether or not they'll be able to enact the same amount of control over him as their plans require remains to be seen. There are many unknowns as a result of this deviation from the plan, and the Bene Gesserit are determined to maintain control. Jessica feels a heavy responsibility for her decision to have Paul. She knows the burden that has been put upon his shoulders, but will do everything in her power to prepare him as heir of House Atreides and as the potential Kwisatz Haderach, and she is determined to protect him no matter what. So in addition to Paul's education, she also trains him in some of the disciplines of the Bene Gesserit, specifically in the ways of superior observation and combat skills. Paul is quite formidable, though he is still untested and inexperienced, with much to learn. Paul's education has indeed been thorough, yet he'll need every bit of his training to survive what lies ahead. Powerful forces are conspiring against House Atreides. Duke Leto has accepted the Emperor's assignment to govern Dune and oversee its valuable spice harvesting operations, but he doesn't take this so-called gift at face value. Leto is smarter than that. Paul's father is a noble-minded, charismatic, yet formidable ruler. As such, he is growing in popularity and influence among the other great houses. This offer of stewardship over Arrakis is a trap designed to remove House Atreides as a threat to the Emperor's continued rule. The current Emperor Shaddam IV of House Carino cannot simply attack House Atreides outright. Instead, he has to operate in the shadows with unsavory characters. Perhaps none as unsavory as the tyrannical and sadistic Baron Vladimir of House Harkonnen. The Baron would love nothing more than to see the Atreides bloodline ended and his own house seated back on Arrakis, and eventually to rule the Empire itself. His ambition and hatred for the Atreides knows no bounds. With these two houses conspiring against the Atreides, the trap is set, and Duke Leto knows it. Even before they make their way to Arrakis, Leto is putting a plan in place to give them a fighting chance and an opportunity to come out on top. The key to his plan is desert power. A resource long overlooked and underestimated, the desert-dwelling natives of Arrakis, known as the Fremen. They have survived for thousands of years on this planet by being ruthlessly practical and by putting the strength of the tribe above all else. They are deeply spiritual, secretive, and trained by the desert to be a lethal fighting force. Paul's father plants the seeds of goodwill with the Fremen. If his family and his house are to have any chance on Arrakis, he must make an alliance with them to aid them in their fight against the Emperor and the Baron. Paul comes to learn quite early the gravity of the situation that his family is in. He becomes increasingly aware of potential future events, and at times it seems as though his biggest enemy is destiny itself. When Paul encounters the Fremen, he feels somewhat familiar with them as he has often seen the young Fremen girl Chani in his dreams. Her and the Fremen leader Stilgar play an integral part in Paul's introduction to the tribe. As Paul and his mother integrate into the tribe, he chooses the name Muad'dib, a name that will become infamous as the story of Dune continues to unfold. Enlisting the Fremen's help, however, leads to another one of Destiny's machinations. Thousands of years ago, the Bene Gesserit placed a prophecy on Dune. This religious engineering initiative, known as the Missionaria Protectiva, was intended as a safety measure in case a Bene Gesserit ever found need of it. The prophecy states that the son of a Bene Gesserit would come and lead the Fremen to paradise. After the Fremen meet Paul, they begin to suspect he is this promised one, the one they call Mahdi, as he is the son of the Bene Gesserit, Lady Jessica. So in more than one sense, Paul is a manufactured messiah. We will see how he handles this heavy religious responsibility. So at the mere age of 15, Paul is trained in combat, political and military strategy, and espionage. He possesses superhuman mental abilities, Bene Gesserit techniques in battle and observation. Impressive, to say the least. Every person involved in his education and upbringing has left their mark on Paul, so it can be said that he is an amalgamation of all the members of House Atreides. And I find it so interesting how Paul is written, that even with all of his amazing abilities and training, he is still relatable. He is a teenager having to leave his childhood behind to carry the weight of responsibility thrust upon him. He must learn to adapt and accept circumstances beyond his control. We see him change, and not always for the better. We see him struggle and make mistakes. Because he is also flawed, we become engrossed in his story and how he impacts and is impacted by those around him. Every character in Dune is a vital piece to this story, and we see that clearly through Paul's journey. He is undoubtedly the most complex character in Dune, and it's captivating to see how his arrival on Arrakis changes everything. The character of Paul was portrayed previously by Kyle MacLachlan in David Lynch's 1984 film, and by Alec Newman in the year 2000 on the Sci-Fi Channel miniseries. I enjoyed aspects of both performances, though Alec Newman's physical appearance wasn't quite right for me. Paul is supposed to be 15 years old when the story begins, and actually both of these actors look too old to be playing a character of that age. This time, this heavy mantle of Paul Atreides has been put on Timothée Chalamet, who will portray him in Denis Villeneuve's new film adaptation. I think he definitely has the acting chops to play this incredibly complex role, and I must say he looks more like how I envisioned Paul when I read the novel. Timothée just seems to have a more youthful appearance than either of the two previous actors. But I think the role of a teenage Paul Atreides definitely requires a level of maturity far beyond his teenage years. Paul literally has the weight of the universe on his shoulders, and that kind of responsibility surely ages you. I'm really looking forward to Timothee's performance, and I hope it does Frank Herbert's vision justice. Ultimately, Paul Atreides is definitely the most important character to get right. We see him go through drastic changes. It seems he is just a pawn of destiny's whims. He is the ducal heir of House Atreides, the Bene Gesserit's Kwisatz Haderach, the Fremen's Messiah. It's fascinating to see how he wields this responsibility and this great power. On that note, I'd like to end this video with the thoughts of the author himself regarding Paul, as a teaser for what we can look forward to as the story of Dune continues.
What is the message? What is the statement that you're attempting to make here?
Don't trust leaders to always be right. I worked to create a leader in this book who would be really an attractive, charismatic person for all the good reasons, not for any bad reasons. Then power comes to him. He makes decisions. Some of his decisions made for millions of people, millions upon millions of people, don't work out too well.
I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like if you did, and be sure to subscribe for more Dune and other sci-fi and fantasy content. Thank you all so much for your support, and as always, have a very nerdy day.